Hi, welcome to another edition of the Muscle News. And today I have an interesting show about the comments bodybuilding legend Shawn Ray made about Michal Krizo placing one place ahead of Keone Pearson at the 2025 Prague Pro. So, I mean, Shawn was saying that it was a travesty, as you will hear, and that it that Mikhail shouldn't have placed ahead of Shawn. But when you look at the pictures, we'll go through them now as well. Even though Keone has a much more pleasing physique, on stage, Keone is lost when standing next to uh, Krizo, even though Krizo has some, problems, especially in his waist area. Bob Cicherillo, as you will hear as well, mentions that Keone has to also, take care of that slight problem he has in his waist. Now, that could be that he tried to gain weight, a lot of weight in a short time after the Olympia to compete in the open class at the Prague Pro. Um, Going back to what Chris Saucedo said earlier this week, he said that Keone, it would have been better for him to, you know, go into an open show after 7 months of prep, not just 2 weeks after, dieting down for the 2-on-2 and going back up, to look a bit bigger on stage. With the open bodybuilders that are much bigger. I mean, even Fitzwater was looking bigger than him, even though they're almost the same height. So before we start showing Shawn Ray's comments and Bob's comments, I want to share with you how Krizo looked on stage compared to how Keone Pearson looked. So let me get these photos up to share them with you. Here we go. So we have Krizo. So as you can see, Krizo, even though he has a wider waist, he's a phenomenal bodybuilder. He arrived in great condition. You know, I mean, he might need to improve a bit more on his posing, but his side shots, his chest, his biceps, I mean, I might see it differently than other people, but I've met my Krizo many times and, he's evolved during the years. Just fantastic condition and putting a 2-on-2 bodybuilder next to this on stage, regardless if he has a more aesthetic physique, it will be difficult to beat. Krizo improved his back, and obviously his most muscular is something to see. Um, Obviously, he's a fan favorite in Prague, and um, not saying that helped for him to place third, but now when you see, the photos of Keone, I see Keone was slightly off after the Olympia. Obviously he wanted to win his third title at the Olympia, and I'm just saying that, I think fourth place was a great showing for Keone. I mean, as it looks, Keone wasn't as conditioned as Krizo. Seeing these, obviously a fantastic side chest, you know. He is literally what they're saying, pound for pound, the best bodybuilder in the world at the moment. But when you put him on the open stage, things start to things start to show differently. I mean, as you can see after seeing Krizo was looked a bit more conditioned and looked more superior compared to Keone. Like I said, I'm not taking anything away from both of these bodybuilders. I'm just talking about my opinion compared to what Shawn Ray, what you're about to hear now. So let me play Shawn Ray's opinion from the VOB podcast with Bob Cicherillo. Um, so here we go.
Who's ever competed knows.
Well, while we're talking about Prague, the problem I have with Prague was Keone losing to Krizo. That to me was travesty. I felt for Keone. I felt the pain for Keone because Krizo is good, as big as he is. You cannot get past the barrel stomach, the lack of detail.
Yeah.
The trunks were disappearing into his flesh. There was no taper. Krizo looked good in certain poses, but in the overall flow, Keone wins that show every day, all day, with Stevie Wonder being the judge.
Well,
Now saying Stevie Wonder being a judge, I mean, all the judges should be offended with this, even Steve Weinberger, because he was there. But being Shawn Ray, most probably they won't tell him anything. But if it was another podcast, they would have, who knows what have been said, that they're all, negativity and all this stuff. But when it comes from these guys, that's the problem with this industry. Some people can say some things, and if somebody else says the same thing, that's why I put up this footage so nobody can say that it's not true. Let me continue playing what Shawn Ray had to
Well,
say.
when you say, you mean he beats Krizo, not that he wins the show.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, because, and that was my next question to you is did Keone get exposed at this show? Now, granted, there were some good bodybuilders in Martin Sampson and even Krizo when it comes to the muscularity department, but certainly void of Hadi.
It seems that Bob is not, the way I see it, Bob doesn't really agree with Shawn 100%. That, you can tell that he's, saying that he was exposed, and later on, you'll see a clip of, Bob talking about even Keone's waist, just as Shawn talked about Krizo's.
Jacked and Derek. Keone went in there with some high expectations. People thinking he could win this whole thing. This could really set a mark, and a guy that could win an open show. And we didn't really see that materialize. Now, I didn't think Keone was as good here as he was at the Olympia. If he was Shawn, he certainly would have placed above Krizo. But does he place above Sampson or Martin even at 100% or not?
Well, yeah, what I discovered was sometimes you're only as good as the people you stand next to. Mind you, looking at Keone the last 3-4 years, we were comparing him with Shawn Sarita. Arguably the only comparison with Shawn Sarita. And Shawn's a diminutive 177 pounds, and Keone just looks so much bigger and fuller, and wow, this guy puts on some weight. But then you put him on that open stage and he kind of disappeared. So
Shawn is saying that he should have beat Krizo, and now he's saying that when you put him on a stage with the open bodybuilders, he disappears. So what does that say for the judges? The judges, this is a bodybuilding contest. The judges, their eyes are going to go on to the bigger, more conditioned Krizo, even though he has some poses that might lose against Keone. But overall, Krizo, I think, was the pick for third place. Okay. So let's continue. He didn't have the wow factor because now he's standing up against guys bigger. And so he loses that advantage of being bigger than Shawn to guys like Sampson and Krizo, who Sampson's better, Krizo's bigger. And if you lose that battle, my inclination for advice for Keone, stay with what got you there. Don't change. He came up a little bit for this show, it looked like, but he was already at the cusp in Las Vegas. But he should do what James Flex Lewis did, stay there, win as many 212 titles as you can. Let these big guys graduate, and maybe down the road go. I personally don't think it's time for Keone to go in the open. I think there's open shows he can win, but you have to be strategic. But in the meantime, don't bother. Flex Lewis wasn't out there competing in a bunch of open shows.
No.
He was winning the 212, and that was it. And he was elevating his business, his visibility, popularity, and all of that. You know what? Keone doesn't have to reinvent the wheel. There are many shows out there. Very few will pay you $50,000 and an Olympia title. So I would just go around, market that title, be a special guest, do the promo, do the speaking, get your product endorsements, and be the king of the 212 for as long as you can.
Well, no argument with that.
I've changed my opinion. You see that? I've changed my opinion because I was saying Keone was the best bodybuilder.
Yeah.
But now that we've seen him against some of the best, Hadi wasn't there, Derek wasn't there. So where would that have put him?
Well, and this is why we play the game, right? Because, listen, we speculate that's what we do, okay? That's what we get. So,
Shawn Ray couldn't decide if Keone should have won this, Now we'll hear what Bob has to say, and I'll put on the posing routines, obviously with no music, showing Krizo and Keone. Plus, I have comparison photos, so you can see the difference between the top 3 guys compared to Keone. So let's listen to Bob, what he says about Keone. This is important.
There's not enough meat on the bone to go in the open unless he's strategic about it. But then he would have to peak somewhere throughout the year that might screw him up for the Olympia. And I don't want to see him make that mistake.
keep in mind too, Sean, he's got that stomach issue that
There you
he
go.
really has to keep an eye on. Right now, if I'm him, I'd be looking at possible solutions to that because it's only going to get worse. I know he has talked to Phil Heath, who's the resident expert at that, and Phil offered his advices because he's like, look, I've been through this. I've gone through exactly what you're going to go through or should go through. And that the separation of the abdominal wall only gets worse. It doesn't ever get better. It doesn't correct itself. And the bigger he gets, the worse it's going to be. You saw a little bit of that this year. So something for him to keep an eye on. Hopefully it doesn't take him out for any type of a long time period as he's young in his career and he can win this 212 for as long as he wants to, really. He could actually contend for the record of Flex Lewis of 7, I believe, because he's that good. But Krizo, two things. One, probably the best shape we've ever seen him in. He has made improvements. He's brought up some body parts, got his glutes a little bit fuller, a little bit thicker. There's a whole bunch of nothing going on there.
So that's what Bob had to say about Keone. So it's like both are not agreeing on who should have beat who. That's the way I'm seeing it, but obviously they're not going to go against each other on this podcast. So moving on, we can show the posing routines of both Keone and Krizo. Just a moment here. Let me get them up. So here we go. You can tell right away that his waist is getting a bit wide as well, Like I said, I think he is one of the best bodybuilders in the world, but I think that he maybe added a bit too much weight for the show in a short time, and it, goes to probably affected his waist. Fantastic condition. I mean, alone, posing alone, you'll say this guy will win the show. But unfortunately, when he goes up against those other guys, as you will see, there's such a difference, So let's see. These are more mandatories. They're not the actual posing routine. Fantastic back development, probably the best on that night. But again, size. The bigger bodybuilder, as Lee Haney says, usually beats the smaller bodybuilder if they're really close, in condition and then fullness. Yeah, his vacuum pose, So that's Keone. That's Keone. Now let's get Krizo up and running. So this is Krizo. Here, and down the sound volume. Now, Krizo, as we said, is a fan favorite in Prague. He's won it there already once. So here you go. He's great condition. He's a really big bodybuilder. I mean, when you're up next to him, the condition, it's evident that Krizo was in better, like his condition was better than, I think, than Keone, We didn't really hear anything from Keone, so I think he accepted the result. It's just the debates after the show. Krizo does have a wide waist, but I think he's working with George Farah, and as well, I forgot to mention, I have some comments that I got from Instagram that you can see Krizo replying to Shawn Ray, and there's some comments from PJ Brown and even George Farah. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that George is Krizo's coach. Again, his back improved immensely from last year. He has much more. He still has a lot of work to do, but Krizo's getting there. He had that shoulder surgery, so he had to make his way back from that, and it looks like his training, he could concentrate more on training, and obviously there you go. He's a fan favorite. Getting the crowd going in Prague. Look at that pose now. Bang, one of the best in the industry. His leg improvement's getting better as well. And the most muscular. You can win him a show. So that's Krizo. So let me find those comments and show you what they had to say. They're quite funny, but I looked at other places, but I found these here and there. So this is Krizo replying to Shawn Ray's comments that we just heard. Uh, so this is it. Krizo says, this man has fear of big men, I think. Fortunately, he isn't a judge. So Krizo is, he's saying, it's a good thing Shawn Ray wasn't a judge. So, and, as usual, Krizo joking around that Shawn Ray is scared of the bigger bodybuilders. And this is a comment from PJ Braun. Uh, this is what PJ Braun had to say. He said, as much as I love Keone, once you see him next to the guy like Krizo, who's just freaking massive and was also ultra conditioned, you got to give it to Krizo. Keone will be there in a few years. No need to rush him. So, PJ is on the same wavelength as I am and many other people in the industry. He knows Keone well because I think he used to sponsor him or help train him in his early days. So that's a really, good comment from PJ. And finally, I have George Farah talking about Crizio. Obviously, George is always pushing his clients, right? But let's see what he had to say. So George Farah says, Crizio came in nearly 15 pounds heavier and sharper than ever. One of the most conditioned athletes on the stage. Give us just a little more time, and what's coming next will change the game. Olympia, we're coming. And for those saying he's getting old, Michal is only now stepping into his prime. So, fair comment from George. Krizio's already qualified for the Olympia in 2026. He won the show in the UK. So, I think Krizio will do well. I'm not saying that he's going to win the show. Top 10. Top 10 is a good mark for him, a good goal. Hopefully he'll move up higher. So I just wanted to show the difference as well with the comparisons. So here we go. These are just the ones basically with Keone and where there's Krizo on stage because the debate is if Keone should have beat. Yeah, so here you go. So this is the comparison. Look at the difference in size. I mean, width-wise, Keone, looks, like he's comparing well to Krizo, but the height, the size of the biceps, the condition, Keone is looking quite small. So going to the next one. Look at the back. I mean, Keone is not as sharp as he was at the Olympia, and I think Krizo, he doesn't have the taper that Keone has, and unfortunately, Krizo's waist is showing a bit, here, but still, Krizo's the bigger bodybuilder. Side tricep pose, even though Keone might be more balanced, Krizo's looking just too dominant, most muscular. I think Krizo takes this all the way. That's my opinion. I don't know. Maybe other people think differently, but it's very hard to beat Krizo on this pose. Anybody in the industry, Look at this. I mean, Samson, Krizo and Keone. I mean, Samson is, he has a aesthetic, eye-pleasing physique. Krizo looks bigger in some body parts. Obviously, the waist. Here, I think Samson was a good choice to finish in, above them in second. Look at this, lat spread. Obviously, Keone has a much better lat spread, but it's just, I don't know. It's my eyes go on to Krizo because he's just the bigger bodybuilder, and this is bodybuilding at the end of the day. Here you go, the side chest. Samson, much more aesthetic, but Krizo, he's looking good here. His legs, the biceps, shoulders, chest, he's looking good here. He's looking very good. Again, a back pose. You can give it to Keone, but again, the size of the arms and everything on Krizo, the condition, it's going towards him. And obviously the the ab pose, I don't think Krizo's totally in his pose here, but Keone, I think he's just coming off the vacuum pose. So, this goes to Samson, obviously. But Krizo is just more conditioned. I think it's a fair placing that Keone placed in fourth. So that's it for that. So basically, That's it for this. I think it was a Krizo placing third was a fair placing after coming off a win from the UK. Probably, Krizo went into the show just, to enjoy himself and see where he can place. But then he did beat Keone. So, he had, I think that's a fantastic result. So now he can shut it down. Shut it down. I heard that he might be competing in some other events this year, which is fantastic. I think Krizo, the more he's on stage, the better he gets. I've seen him compete live many times, and he's really impressive when you see him, in real life. I mean, pictures don't do any of them justice, but seeing Crizio in real life is something special. So I think he will do well this year if he competes somewhere else, but I wouldn't suggest that he keeps competing going into the Olympia because he's already qualified, and I think he should shut it down for a bit afterwards, and then go into the Olympia. But hey, there's the Pittsburgh Pro, there's the Arnold if he's invited, or I think if you have to get invited to the Pittsburgh Pro as well. There's the New York Pro, and then he can shut it down after those and work his way to the Olympia. I'm sure that George will guide him properly. And obviously, Keone will go back to the 212. I don't think he'll do any other open shows this year. And just, concentrate on winning his fourth title. Because listen, this year, Sean Clarita pushed him, so Keone cannot take anything for granted. When he's in condition, nobody can beat him. But if he's slightly off, Clarita is there to take the title and some other competitors because the 212 division is very close and everybody's in fantastic shape. So thank you for watching, and don't forget to check out episode 23 of the Muscle News and Merlin Bodybuilding Podcast. That's goes live every Wednesday. We just finished our last episode last Wednesday. It's the Prague review. We cover the top 5 bodybuilders and other great subjects, and I do that with my good friend Eric Brozer. So stay tuned for some more great features, and I'll be back soon.